guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a January recap of all of the books I read this month. It is the 30th of January, so technically there's one more day in the month, but this is the 11 books that I've read in the month of January. I have my smoothie to drink while I talk, so get a drink, get cozy, and let's chat about books. Okay, so the first book that I read in January was The Winners by Frederick Bachman, and I honestly don't really know how much I've talked about this series on my channel so far. I feel like I've talked about Beartown, but I'm not really sure. This is the third book in the Beartown trilogy, so the third and final book, and it is pretty hefty. This is not a small book or a quick read at all. Beartown is the first book. I read that sometime, I think in 2023, and I loved Beartown, and I never ended up moving on to the next book, which is called Us Against You. And so finally, end of last year, I think it was November or December, I finally read Us Against You, and it 100% got me hooked right back into the series, and it was the perfect timing for that read because it was cold and snowy, and this series just kind of takes place in the winter. Basically, it's kind of always snowing, I feel in this story, and it is just a series that revolves around hockey. And so I just felt like it was kind of the perfect timing to jump back into the Beartown series was during the winter. And as soon as I finished Us Against You, I immediately jumped right into The Winners, and then I hit a reading slump. And I did not read for 3 weeks during the holiday season. So all through the week leading up to Christmas, the week of Christmas, and the week of New Year's, I basically did not read at all. We were really busy and we didn't really have time. And so January 1st, I basically was okay, it's time to get back into The Winners, back into my groove, and back into reading. And this was the perfect book to pick back up as my first book back from a reading slump, because this was a 5-star read. My first book of January was a 5-star read for me, and that is crazy. But I really, really love this series, and I highly recommend. I feel like this is one of those series where it's so hard to describe, and it's specifically hard to describe why it's so good. You just have to kind of jump into it. But for me, it's particularly Frederick Bachman's writing style is just excellent. He is a really, really great author, and so this series has made me want to read basically all of his books that he's written, because I think he's honestly just amazing. And so yeah, the first line of Beartown I will read for you guys, because I feel like by the first line alone, it is just addicting. I feel like from line 1 of this book, it's just you have to read it. And the first line is, late one evening toward the end of March, a teenager picked up a double-barreled shotgun, walked into the forest, put the gun to someone else's forehead, and pulled the trigger. Tell me that does not get you wanting to read this book. What an opening line. So that's all I have to say about The Winners. This was a 5-star. Obviously, I can't talk about this book because it's the third, so that's why I'm just telling you, go read Beartown. Beartown is so good. The next book that I read in January was You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose. Here is the cover. Sorry, I read a ton of books on my Kindle this month, so there's the cover of You Shouldn't Have Come Here. This one was just okay to me. So this one I gave a 3-star. It was short and quick, and like it was a very easy read. So basically I had one day that I was working at the bookstore, and it was a really slow day, and I had my Kindle and one physical book with me, and I was able to read the whole You Shouldn't Have Come Here and start another book. Like, this was so quick and short that I literally read it in one sitting, basically. So that is a huge pro to me for this book. But the cons was that, one, I felt very little connection to the characters, so I didn't really care very much. And two, I felt it was a tiny bit predictable. I somewhat guessed what the twist in the end was going to be by the beginning of the book, which was a little bit frustrating. I usually try really hard not to guess the ending of a thriller, because personally I feel like it's way more enjoyable to let yourself get surprised. Like, let yourself feel that shock that the author wants you to feel while reading this book, and that is going to be the most enjoyable way to read a thriller. And I feel like this one was just too easy, I guess. And I don't know if that's just me. I don't know how other people have felt. I haven't even looked up any other. I know that I didn't love a book very much when, like, I basically put the book down and never gave a second thought to it. Like, I have not really thought about this book again until now, doing my review of what I read in January. So that is a 3-star for me. It was just okay. Then the next book that I read in January was The Deal by Elle Kennedy. This book is one that's been on my physical TBR for so long. I actually had the old cover of the first book, and I recently found this one at a used bookstore near me. And it's just so cute, this cover is, and it's got sprayed edges. This is just such a pretty one. Like, I feel like I'd have a hard time getting rid of this book because it's just so cute. But my review of this book is a 3-star. So I feel like this one was another one that was fairly quick and easy. And I did really like the characters of this book. So I felt like I felt fairly connected to Hannah and Garrett as the main two male and female main characters in this book. And I felt like fairly connected to them, especially Hannah. Like, reading from her perspective, I was pretty into it, you know? I don't know what else to say, but I would say, like, I think that it's actually the writing. I think that I don't love Elle Kennedy's writing, which is really funny because one of the series that I loved when I was in high school was a series by, it's got a different pen name, but the author is Elle Kennedy and another author that wrote together, and the series is Paper Princess, if you can look that up, which is by Aaron Watt. And Aaron Watt is a pen name for Elle Kennedy and another author. I can never remember the second author's name. But I, like, loved that series when I was really young, and I feel like now I feel like I just could see how, like, now it's probably nostalgic to me, but I have learned that I just don't love Elle Kennedy's writing. So I might try to finish out the off-campus series because I'm only like 2 books away from reading the whole series, but you'll see how I feel about them. So moving on to the next book that I read, which was Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing by Matthew Perry. I very much enjoyed this book. I am a huge Friends fan, and I love memoirs. I've just come to learn this about myself. I did not know that I love memoirs until the last, I don't know, the last year or two. But I do. I really love memoirs. And this one to me was very sad and very devastating, but really good. And I feel like personally the saddest part of this book now, reading it in 2024 or 2025, is that we know now that he has passed away, and we know like how he died, which is the saddest part. And if you read this book, you'll like really understand why that's so devastating. But I found it really enjoyable, but it is very sad. It is pretty dark. I mean, he constantly talks about drug addictions and alcohol abuse. So if those are hard topics for you, definitely don't pick up this book. But I found this incredibly enjoyable, and I definitely recommend it. Then the next book that I read was The Mistake by Elle Kennedy. So this is the second book in the Off-Campus series. And for me, I ended up giving this one a 2-star. I did not. This was my least favorite one so far in the series. I did not like this one. I didn't really like the characters that it followed. It felt really raunchy and just like, I don't know, I just did not enjoy this one very much. And this is part of the reason why I don't know if I will continue the series, because I really did not love I didn't really love any of the books in it, but I feel like now I'm only like one more book. So the way that this series is laid out is there's 4 books that are it's from the perspective of 4 different couples, and it shows you each of their stories of falling in love. And then the last book is called The Legacy, and it's basically showing you where all of them ended up. So it's like a full book that's just like kind of showing you all of their stories and where they ended up after college, because this whole series takes place on the campus of college. And so with that being said, I feel like I really want to just finish out the series because I'm so close to finishing the series. Plus I actually have the last book in this series in a physical form. So all the other ones are on Kindle Unlimited, and that's how I'm reading them. But I have the first and the last book in the physical copy. So I don't know. I kind of want to finish the series, but we'll see what happens. I'm really unsure about that one. So then the next book after The Mistake was One by One by Frida McFadden. This is, I would probably rate this a 3-star. I'm still slightly unsure of how I feel exactly on this book. Like, meaning it's either a 3-star is like the lowest that I would rate this book. So it's probably more like a 3.5, but not a 4-star. And the reason I feel that way is this book was really enjoyable. It was very short and very quick. I really liked that. I did feel fairly connected to specifically the main viewpoint. It does jump around, so we get multiple point of views, but the main girl that it follows, there is a main character, and I feel like I did feel fairly connected to her, and I really wanted to see, like, I was invested. I wanted to see how it was going to turn out. But I would say that this probably isn't my favorite Frida McFadden book that I've read, and I feel like it's also not my favorite thriller I've ever read. So, you know, if I'm kind of ranking it with other thrillers, I feel like it kind of belongs somewhere in like a 3.5 range for a star rating. But it was still very enjoyable, and I definitely do recommend this one. Like, I I don't know, I feel like if somebody's looking for a really fast-paced, short thriller, like just to kind of get you out of a reading slump, I feel like this might be one that would help, but it's not my favorite thriller I've ever read. Then the next book, again, was The Score by Elle Kennedy. So this was the third book in the series, and I felt like because I had read the first one and I liked it, it was fairly enjoyable, and then I read the second one and I really did not love the second one. I was like, I feel like I need to give this series another chance, and I want to keep going because, like I said, I have the last book, and I don't know, like I feel for some reason like I've wanted to read this series for so long that like I want to like it more than I do, I think. But in terms of The Score, I gave The Score a 3-star. And this one was probably tied for how much I liked it compared to The Deal. So I feel like these two were probably tied for which characters I liked the most. I did really enjoy this one. I liked the character development that happened in this one. I did really enjoy it, but I think Hannah and Garrett is still my favorite storyline, which is The Deal. Then here's where we get to the good stuff. Here's my next read. This is when Onyx Storm came out. And I don't know. I still don't know how the heck I feel about Onyx Storm. I'm so torn because Fourth Wing is 100% a 5-star book for me. Like Fourth Wing, I absolutely loved, could not put it down, would not stop raving about it. I loved Fourth Wing. Then Iron Flame came out, and I read Iron Flame immediately. And huge downgrade for me from Fourth Wing to Iron Flame. Like I felt like Fourth Wing, I don't know, maybe my expectations were too high. I don't really know what happened there, but I did not love Iron Flame. I felt like it felt rushed. It felt like there was a lot of unnecessary details just to fill a page number or a page count. And I just did not love it. But I'm still along for the ride. I'm still going to be buying and reading the books as they come out because I'm still invested. I still want to know where she's going with this. But Iron Flame came out, and I feel like I don't know. This one's really hard for me because a lot of people are saying like this is their favorite book in the series so far, and I just do not understand that. I do not understand anybody who loved Iron Flame or Onyx Storm. Sorry, I said the wrong title. I do not understand the people who are saying that Onyx Storm is their favorite one in the series. Like, how? How do you feel that way? Because to me, nothing has compared to the first book. Like, Fourth Wing was just so good, and so, I don't know. I really had a hard time with Onyx Storm, as you guys can see. I felt like, first of all, I was very confused, like 50% into the book. I was so confused about like, who are we even talking about? Who are these characters? What is going on? Like, I felt so lost, and I thought that maybe that was because I didn't do a reread of Fourth Wing and Onyx Storm, or Fourth Wing. Oh my gosh, guys. Maybe it's because I did not do a reread of Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. But then I started watching, like, as people would put out their reviews and stuff, a lot of people were saying that they also were confused and they did do a reread. So I don't know. Like, I don't know. I did talk about it a little bit in I did an Onyx Storm reading vlog, where I told everybody thoughts and feelings as I was reading it. Obviously non-spoiler, so I didn't really say much about the story, but I did say like how I was feeling. And I still, now it's been a few weeks, and I still hold to those feelings. I still feel like I was fairly bored in the beginning. I was very confused. I didn't know who the heck she was talking about half the time. Like, who are these characters? What is going on? And I just feel like it really picked up in the last 100 pages, and that's where it got good, and that's where I could not put the book down, and that is where my final feelings really came into play with that. So when I originally read Onyx Storm, I on Goodreads put 5 stars because I was thinking it was like a 4.5, but I'm actually going to knock it down to just a 4-star because I feel like, you know, looking back now, like being a couple weeks away from having read it and having like, I feel more like I know how I felt about reading it, and it's just not my favorite in the series. But I will say I liked this better than Iron Flame. I do not really remember loving Iron Flame except for the last 100 pages. And the last 100 pages had me like, I could not get over the ending. That's what had me dying to pick up the 3rd book, because I needed to know what was going to happen. And I still feel that way. She left us off on another cliffhanger. So of course I'm going to be buying the 4th book when it comes out, because I need to know. Like, I'm still invested. It's still a really good series to me. I just feel like I've been a little bit let down by book 2 and 3. So that's final feelings, final thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys don't tear me to shreds over not loving Onyx Storm, because I feel like a ton of people have been absolutely loving Onyx Storm and like literally nonstop raving about it, and I just don't feel that way. Then the next book that I read was The Librarian of Auschwitz, and this book was my book club's book pick for January. And personally, I don't really have much to say about this one, but I did not love it. This was like a 2.75 to me star rating. I felt it was way longer than it needed to be. I didn't really feel super connected to the main character in this story, and I don't know, I didn't love it personally. I feel like writing style wise, I feel like there's some other like Nazi Germany, World War II reads that I would pick over this one, or that I would even recommend over this one. Now obviously this is based on a true story, and so I'm not judging, like my star rating isn't judging this story or this girl, like, and what she lived through. Like, that is absolutely insane what she lived through, and I do feel for her, but my star rating comes in the writing style and the author's choice of how he wrote this story. I just did not love the author's writing style. Like, I would not pick up another book by this author. I don't even know if this author wrote other books, but I wouldn't pick up another one by this author because I just really did not love the writing style. That's all I have to say about that one. So moving on, the second to last book that I read in January was The Crash by Frida McFadden. This is actually like a brand new release. This just came out on, I think the 28th was the release day, Tuesday the 28th, and it's Thursday the 30th, so it came out 2 days ago, and I read this one yesterday. I have to say, I know that there are people that really do not like Frida McFadden, but I have to say I love the way that she writes such a quick, easy, captivating thriller that's like the fact that I know, like, if I'm feeling a reading slump coming on, just pick up a Frida McFadden. It'll take me like 4 hours to read it, and it'll be so worth it. I love them every time. Like, I feel like they're never like 5-star thrillers, but they're always so enjoyable that afterwards I'm always like, yeah, that I would recommend that. That was really enjoyable. And I felt the same way about The Crash. This one, I actually really loved this story. This one was a 4-star for me. The only thing that knocks it down to me is that I felt like there was a part in the story that just dragged on a little bit too long. Like, I felt like something should have been done a lot quicker than it was actually done. But other than that, the story was incredibly thrilling, and I was definitely intrigued from the very start. Like, I really, really wanted to know what was going to happen. I felt very connected to the main character. Like, I was so invested in her story and what was going to happen to her. Like, there was parts in this book that I was like on the edge of my seat. Like, what is going to happen to this character? Like, I was honestly going to be I was going to be very upset. Like, if things started happening to her, like, I don't know. I just really, really enjoyed this one. I think that this was a really fun thriller. This is probably one of my favorite Frida McFaddens that I've read so far. I did love The Housemaid, but this one might rank over The Housemaid. I really, really enjoyed this one. So, yeah, that's my second to last book for January. And my last book in January was Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. Actually, I just realized I said these out of order. This was the second to last and The Crash was the last, but it really doesn't matter. I finished this one in the same day I picked up The Crash. So literally the dates that I finished these two books were actually the same day, technically. I just started this one first. But this was one that I was actually highly anticipating for this year. This came out on Book of the Month. This was actually an early release on Book of the Month. I was very excited about it, but I ended up waiting a little bit and read it into January because I started it in December and I felt like I was really struggling to feel connected to the main character, and I was struggling to feel invested in the story. And I will say that feeling did not leave me. I will say it's a short book, it's a short thriller, but that feeling never changed. I was never very invested in the main character and his story pretty much all the way to the very end, which was a little sad because I had really high hopes for this, and maybe that's like what happened. Maybe I just had my expectations were a little too high on this book, but I do feel like, I don't know, I felt like a little bit disappointed in this one. I have read 2 other Alice Feeney books and I loved the other 2 that I read. I read Daisy Darker and Rock, Paper, Scissors and loved both of them. Like, they were 2 of my favorite thrillers I've probably ever read. And so maybe that's why I had, like, my expectations were a little high. Plus, this cover is just, like, gorgeous. I was so excited to read this one. And, yeah, that was the biggest downfall. I think the story, the plot, had really good potential. The hardest part for me was that I did not feel connected to the main character at all. So by the end, I was kind of just ready for it to be over. Like, I didn't really care what happened to him, which is why in The Crash, like, that was such a big switch from reading this to jumping to The Crash, where I was so invested in what happened to the main character. I don't know, that was just a really big, like, shift in how I felt. So this one I'm giving a 3-star. I love Alice Feeney, and I would say that I would recommend other books by her before I recommend this one. Sorry, I don't know what's happening. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That is all that I read so far in January. We do have one more day. So I will tell you, I'm currently reading Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams, which this is part of the When in Rome series by this author. I absolutely loved When in Rome and The Perfect Match. Is that what it's called? Let's see. No, I was so far off. Practice Makes Perfect is the second book, not The Perfect Match. Totally don't know what's going on up here. But I loved When in Rome, and I loved Practice Makes Perfect. Actually, Practice Makes Perfect is like one of my favorite romances, I think, that I've read. Sarah Adams typically writes closed door romance, and she wrote the cheat sheet, she wrote the rule book. She's got a lot of really good, I've enjoyed like pretty much every book that I've read by her so far. So when she announced that she was releasing a third book in the When in Rome series, I knew that I was going to want to read this one pretty much immediately. And this just came out I think it came out early January. And so I had a little gift card to Barnes & Noble, and so that is what I ended up getting, and this is what I'm reading right now. I am only on chapter 4, and I'm enjoying it so far. I don't think that I love it just yet to the extent that I loved the other two, but obviously I'm only on chapter 4, so we got a lot of reading to do to see how I feel about this one. So that is pretty much it. That is all for my January reads. And thank you guys so much for watching. I hoped that you enjoyed this video. Let me know how you guys feel about any of these books, especially Onyx Storm. I want to hear thoughts and opinions. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.